Hey everybody, as you can tell, I am currently in the school pickup line recording this intro. I'm trying to get this one done really quickly because our guest this week, Chris Hartwell, writer director of Do No Harm, has a Houston premiere on Thursday night, uh, this Thursday. So trying to get it out in a timely manner. Um, this whole episode kind of took a while to get together just because of my schedule. Our schedules have been crazy, but I'm glad I finally got them in. Uh, I'm glad I was able to sort of rush it and get it done. However, in rushing it, uh, of course, one of my cameras decided, two of my cameras decided not to work correctly. I don't think you notice it really, but just in case, I know someone's going to point it out, so I'm going to hang up, lantern on it first. So I had to work around that. But other than that, great chat, great conversation. Do No Harm is a great film about a in-home nurse who starts to really feel the pressure of doing that job, and things kind of spiral out. Great performances by the entire cast, particularly the lead, Harry Shum Jr. Ronny Chieng is in it, who's one of my favorite comedians, and Chris Hartwell, great director. This is his first feature. He's got some great stories about talking about how they got it together with little time and little money. So stick around and check it out. And if you can, if you're local to Houston, try to make it out to that screening. And if not, check out their website, and it'll have information on future screenings. So, Chris,
Yes.
thank you for being on here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Watched the film a couple times, actually. I had an opportunity to check it out.
Oh, thanks, brother.
And really enjoyed it. I really loved it and was impressed by a lot of things about it, which we'll get into. But what I like to do with everybody that comes on here, if they haven't been on before, is sort of get the origin story to start off with, like where are you from? How did you get started in filmmaking?
Yeah.
The whole nine. Your first project.
100%.
Going up to your first project.
Yeah, 100%. So I am not a late bloomer when it comes to my passion for and desire to be involved in film.
Okay.
I watched the original Star Wars like so many filmmakers of my generation.
Right.
At the ripe age of 8. And I didn't even know what that was, but I wanted to do that. Initially it was just me ripping off Star Wars, creating a very original property called Star Final. It was very original, had things like G-Walks in it instead of Ewoks. And after a while, I came to realize that I couldn't just, rip off George Lucas. And then I started developing my own stories. And as they always say, the rest is history. So in high school, I was going full bore, wanting to make as many projects as I could, really, endeavoring to get into a good film school, which I ultimately did. I grew up in Washington State, and then headed down to California, went to Biola University down there, which is a smaller Christian university, but has a great film school in it, and spent a number of years post-graduation working in kind of the YouTube space, a lot of web series, short films, then kind of transitioned into Hulu, making some television series for them. Kind of like in the kind of mid 2000s. But all the while, there was always that ambition of, I want to be a feature film director. And as many filmmakers do, it was kind of just the process of finding the right story. So the fortunate thing about it is I definitely, looking back on it now, probably would not have been ready to make that feature film right out of college. Yeah. As much as, you always tell yourself, I'm ready to go, put me in, coach, I got the goods. And so, there was a process of writing 5, 6 different feature scripts, kind of trying to find the one that was going to be the one. And again, for a variety of reasons, those didn't come to be. And it really wasn't until I actually moved out here to Texas, reuniting with a college buddy of mine who had started a film school out here. So I actually teach at that film school now as well. And at this point in my life, I'd been married to my wife for a few years, and she's a home health nurse. And my dad is a doctor, so I've kind of been around the healthcare world my entire life, kind of just breathing in that oxygen. And even while there's never been a part of me that's, endeavored to be a part of the healthcare world, I absolutely, just because of that proximity, have been just able to appreciate and kind of get a front row seat at the dedication they have, the work that they put in
Right.
each and every day. And especially with my wife, who is a home health nurse. So working in a hospital obviously is extremely taxing. It's challenging. You're seeing people oftentimes on one of the more difficult days of their existence.
Right.
But as a home health nurse, not only are you seeing that, but you're also entering these people's personal space, coming into their home.
Right.
And so when my wife would come home, she would, as you would imagine, bring home a lot of very interesting stories with her, things that were oftentimes far stranger than fiction. And initially, it was just a subconscious collecting of some of those stories, right? And it was not until maybe about 8 years ago that I was kind of, again, putting fingers to keys, pen to paper, trying to work on the next feature-length project, that this story kind of just fell out of me, because I've been kind of subconsciously collecting all these stories for my wife and for my dad all over the years. And so from there, it's been kind of an 8-year process of starting from development to shooting a proof of concept to raising the funds, so on and so forth, and bringing us up here to today.
Yeah. Awesome. So, correct me if I'm. This was your first feature.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super impressive. And like, I know one of the things that did stand out to me. And again, like, I find it so weird that a lot of these things are kind of coming into my view right when I need to see them. But like you mentioned, the home health nurse stuff, we kind of dealt with that with my dad over the last couple years, and that is something that really jumped out to me about the story, because I was like, oh yeah, this is, like having that experience. So you bringing that up, and I totally get why you would be absorbing that and want to sort of reflect it out, because some of those stories there's a lot of compelling stuff there.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, like individuals like yourself, you've experienced that kind of firsthand. And kind of just as a random aside, one of the really important ingredients in getting this piece made was finding our leading man, Harry Shum Jr. And it really kind of just the stars aligned to bring him on board. One of which was his manager, who read the script first, had recently experienced something very similar to you, where she had a home health nurse in her dad's house taking care of him for a while, and she read the script and was like, Harry, you need to at least read this. If not, seriously consider doing this. And so yeah, obviously the ambition and the hope and the prayer is that for those that have experienced things firsthand, there is a level of like, yes, that is representative, at least in some fashion, to what I've experienced. And then for everyone else who maybe hasn't experienced that as specifically, the hope is, that it's an eye-opening experience that you kind of get to, through the film, understand just a little bit better, not only the patients in those situations, but the healthcare provider and what they endure, their heart for it, their desire to take care of others, but also just that recognition of these individuals are also human. They also need care and compassion and grace. And so yeah, it's wonderful here that, that's able to resonate with you.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that I'm glad you touched on that, because that was my next question, how you got Harry involved. How did the script get into the manager's hands? Were you just trying to see who was interested? Like, what was that part of the process like, sort of bringing people in to the project?
Yeah, well, to take a quick step back, so one of the first collaborators that I really felt like I needed to bring on board was an experienced indie film producer. So I'm also a producer on the project, but again, this is my first feature. I have a good friend of mine who's produced pretty much every single short film that I've ever done, but he has another feature as well. And so even while we both were collaborating on this feature, we felt like we would be in a much better position if we were able to bring on board someone that had, done this a couple of times. So after finishing our short film proof of concept, which really the primary aim in making that was to attract talent and producers and investors, we sent it to a couple of buddies, and they connected us to who became our producer, Christian Sosa. And he has done this a few times on varying scales, and thankfully had at least some level of reputation and juice that when he was able to, reach out to different teams, they were like, oh, well, we know Christian because he's done this and this. So with Harry specifically, him being our leading man, I mean, certainly we wanted a name and a face that could be recognized. That's always helpful, right? But also, he's the leading man, and I didn't want to just anybody. I don't care. I'll take anybody. I really needed someone who, as I like to kind of just put it, had the aura of a healthcare provider.
Right. Yes.
You sense this with healthcare providers, especially a home health nurse. You need to, the moment you open a door and look at them, go, yeah, I'll trust you to come on into my house.
Right.
Right. And my wife certainly has that. And so kind of that narrowed things just a little bit, because I really just needed someone that had that kind of innate goodness and openness and charisma. And Harry absolutely has that. You look at his body of work. And then at the same time, they couldn't just be Mr. Chuckles. Like, they're also, as you've seen the film, he makes some decisions that kind of push him into a darker territory.
Right.
And there's some angst in there that's been kind of pent up. And again, I'd seen just enough glimpses of that in Harry's work to go, I think he's got some more to give in that regard. And I think he'll have a lot of fun playing in that space. And that's something too to always think about as an indie filmmaker. Certainly this actor who has some experience is offering you that experience, right? But what are you offering to them? And so for me, it was, I feel like, okay, I think Harry, I'm going to give you a nice course of a meal to kind of sink your teeth into.
Right.
And it has the lightness and it has the warmth, but it also has some of this darkness. So kind of with that in mind, I felt excited and relatively confident giving the scripts to Christian, saying, hey, let's approach Harry's team. And it was, the other thing I always like to say too, there's not some sort of secret handshake or like secret list of emails. Oftentimes you can track down these managers' email addresses. The real trick is once you send that email or metaphorically knock on the door and they crack open the door, you better have something compelling to show.
Absolutely.
And so it was those two pieces. It was the short film itself, the proof of concept, which we had taken around to festivals and won a couple of awards. Always helpful.
Right.
And then a script that, again, I had tailored to a degree for someone just like Harry.
Yeah.
And so I think because of that, and then again, this personal experience that the manager had that ultimately led them to say, hey, let's take a gamble on this. I mean, this guy's a first-time feature film director, and the chances that Harry would end up with some pie in his face, metaphorically speaking, are still a little bit higher, because I could fall flat on my face with that.
Yeah.
But just through the script itself, through initial phone conversation that I had with him, which was extremely nerve-wracking, but he, being the gracious individual he was, very quickly dispensed of my nerves and was just so gracious in that first phone call. You could tell that he was like, yeah, let's just talk to me as a dude, man. Like, I'm just like you, which was so helpful. We were able to kind of move forwards. And there's a couple other really funny stories about how we fit that into his schedule. But yeah, bringing him on board is kind of, that's
Once.
Sadie?
Once.
Wake up.
I made a mistake once.
I need an ambulance at 7326 Richmond Avenue. Sadie.
Everything okay?
Where are you?
Should I call my doctor?
Where were you last night?
So what did happen to Sadie?
What are you so afraid of me seeing?
I was there every single day and I tried. I tried for her, I tried for you, and I tried for everyone. I gave everything.
Once. I made a mistake once.
Another thing that really interested in me in this, but aside from my personal experience, was Ronny Chieng.
Yeah.
Because I've been a huge fan of his for a long time. And watching the movie, I'm like, you couldn't have used his talents better, because what I like about his comedy is he's a guy that is immediately likable and awesome, but he will come for your throat. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So and that kind of happens in the movie a little bit, where he's like, yeah, I'm your buddy, but dude, I
What's
gotta,
going on here?
yeah, exactly. So, and that works so well. So how did you bring him in?
Yeah, so that was really a Harry kind of connection.
Okay.
So the this is again one of the other delights of indie filmmaking is you're constantly laying the tracks in front of the train as it's barreling down the track behind you, right? There's always with something, not enough time in the prep and the pre-production to get things all figured out so you can feel 100% confident that we can do this. And casting that role was one of those situations. So we had reached out to another couple of actors, considering that we were considering for the role of Hector, and just the timing didn't work out for either of them. And as often is the case, you're kind of waiting for the management team to kind of get back to you. Right. So we had already started shooting at this point, hoping that those other ones would get back to us, and they didn't. And in a lot of ways, I'm so thankful that they didn't, because just like you, I felt like Ronnie was perfect in the role and able to, in a film that is so stress-inducing and dour and serious, bring just that little sliver of lightness and levity. Just even in the way that he plays a dramatic character, it's not just all dour, right? There's just a little bit of a spark of fun and mischief in there, which I think is so helpful for a film like this. But essentially, we were 3/4 of the way through the shoot. We were on a Friday evening, and we were due to shoot with the character of Hector on Sunday. And so we went to Harry after a long day of shooting, and these are long days, as they always are on an indie, and we had a very tight schedule. And so after a long day of shooting, we went to Harry, and at this point, we were 3/4 of the way into the shoot, so we'd earned a little bit, I think, of his trust and respect that this project was coming together, and that, again, I'm not going to put pie in his face, and therefore wouldn't put pie on a friend of his face. And so I was like, hey, this is where we're at with this character. Might you have anyone in your back pocket that you would feel comfortable, kind of last-second, audible Hail Mary, reaching out to? And he threw out a couple of names, and I immediately keyed in on Ronnie. I'm like, hey, if that's possible, that would be incredible. Do you think he'd consider it? And he's like, well, there's only one way to find out. So on a Friday evening, Harry jumps on the phone, calls up Ronnie, and 5-minute conversation later, walks over to me. He's like, all right, Chris, here's Ronnie's email address. Send him the script. And I was like, okay. So I sent him the script, and then about 2 hours later, his management team called me up saying, hey, Ronnie would love to jump on the phone, just to make sure I'm not a crazy person, basically, because he liked the script, liked the part. I spoke to him for the first time in my life around 8 p.m. on a Friday. Great conversation, super sweet guy. And that's another thing I'll say about Ronnie. He is one of the most humble, grateful, sincere actors I have ever met, especially for the level of success that he's had.
For sure.
You know, I would hope that every person is gracious, but he doesn't need to be that gracious, and he is so open. And so we had a great conversation. Around midnight on Friday, his team connected with my team and said, he's on board, let's do this. And then a day and a half later, Sunday morning, he was flying out to Houston. We shot 17 pages with him in a day, and he jumped back on a plane and was done. And again, I could not have been more grateful for his just approach to the work. He came in with thoughts and opinions, but also like, this is your baby, Chris. I trust you. What do you need from me? One of my favorite random things about Ronnie is anytime you give him a piece of direction, it's always copy that. No, he was just so open and receptive to whatever needed to be done. And then also, you've seen the film. A lot of his conversations are these phone calls.
Right.
And we kind of treated it almost like almost like an animated film. He was just like a voiceover for it, where he's kind of able to deliver kind of one line at a time. And again, just so humble. Most actors hate line readings, and he was like, hey, if ever you need, just give me a line reading. Just give me the line reading. Tell me how you want it said. And I would do my best to resist that, but he was, again, just so open to recognizing this is, I'm coming on the 11th hour. I recognize this is what you need me to do. Let me give that to you.
Right.
And ever since the filming of the film, he's also just been so willing to support and promote. And to, his constant refrain is like, I hope I get you what you wanted. And I'm like, Ron, absolutely.
You're good.
It was awesome. It was awesome. So
you mentioned the line readings. I'm wondering, since he is a comedian and a very funny dude, were there ever moments where you're like, well, you just give me something just because you're doing things one line at a time, and just
100%.
whatever you can use.
Yes, there were definitely moments where, and he recognized the assignment, which was, this isn't a comedy. And so he came in very much prepared to deliver a dramatic performance. And if there was any kind of one thing I could kind of just nudge him towards, I'm like, hey, feel free to, if there's a moment that you could insert just a little bit more levity in this, or a little ad lib or whatever, find that freedom, feel that freedom. Because, we can always cut around it if it doesn't work, but it's always great to have stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, so thirdly, there's another person in your cast that's like in a pretty big movie right now. So how did Jimmy Gonzalez become?
Oh yes, Jimmy. I love Jimmy. I love the whole cast, and it's easy to say, like, of all the actors I've worked with, this one's this. But Jimmy is, again, just not only a phenomenal actor, but just a real dedicated artist. I remember one of the first conversations I had with him after he came on board, and that connection really came about because he had acted in another one of our producer's films.
Okay.
And the producer reached out and said, "Hey, I think this is a pretty special film and a pretty cool part, and you should think about this." And Jimmy very quickly jumped on board, and a lot of that came from him just recognizing elements of the story, elements of the character that felt very personal and relatable to him. So our very first conversation over a Zoom call, he just jumped straight into the deep end, talking about a lot of very personal things that just that in a way of, I can relate to this character.
Right.
I can relate to this world and the themes and the ideas. And so I knew that I was in very safe company with that level of openness, because that's very much how I love to approach the work of where is this coming from in here, and how can that in some way feed into what we're doing on this film. And so it was just great to, from the word go, have that kind of connection with him. And that absolutely continued on into the shoot as well. And I'll say this both of he and Harry. Something else that I really appreciated is neither of them are yes men. If they don't get something, if something's not making sense, or if they feel like we can plus a moment in some particular way, they'll voice that. Never in a way of being contentious or difficult, but just like, we want to make this as awesome as it can be. And that can sometimes, on a really tight schedule, it can feel not worth it, or just burdensome. And again, they weren't pushing things beyond what they should be, but they're like, "Hey, we got time to discuss this. Can we just hammer this out real quick? Or what if I stood over here instead? Or what if I turned away on this moment?" And having the three of us in certain moments kind of just dialoguing about what a particular scene required and how we could make the most of a moment was always just a joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it shows on the screen, I would say. Now with Jimmy, also that's another casting and character where the energy is such that, how can I put this without giving? It could go either way. You know what I mean? Like I get you're thinking, maybe me watching it the first time, I'm like, "Ooh, how is this gonna?" You know what I mean? And then when it kind of sort of comes, but then you buy. You know what really happens, you know, and so that was a fantastic kind of. It played with me a little bit too, you know, because you see that guy and you expect sort of one thing.
100%, yeah, and that was another thing that I just felt so blessed in casting him, which was you put ideas down on the page, you put character traits and lines down on the page, and I mean, like, I can't speak for other writers, but I know for myself, oftentimes I will, as much as I'm trying to make a character three-dimensional, I do still push them a certain direction to make them maybe a bit more one thing or maybe just two things. And so it's so wonderful when you bring in an amazing actor like Jimmy, and he's able to play those two notes, which are so important, but then also just add this third dimension to who that person is, where they're coming from. And one of the things that I think Jimmy did a beautiful job of is just adding just that much more humanity. Your heart breaks for him so many times throughout the film, and in just enough of an amount that when certain things occur, when certain things play out, you buy that because you've seen some humanity within this man. And he's not just the one thing that maybe that the page might have presented him to be, which is, again, a gift that an actor gives you when they add that extra dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, to speak to the rest of the cast, you know, I feel like that's across the board, you know, like the young lady that played Lean, I think, was amazing. You know, to the point where you're like, where did these people come from? They're great. You know, where have I never, because she has to kind of ride a little bit of a roller coaster too. And she just totally kills all that. And also even, I don't remember the character's name, unfortunately, but the gentleman that has to get his lungs drained. Yeah. Where you're like, oh, what's the end? But then it ends up not really going that way, but it kind of puts you on edge, you know, like, and it's all in performance. Yeah. You know, and how he,
yeah, so the actor who plays that character's name's Ralph Curtis. One of the really fun stories about this is, for anyone out there who's made an indie feature film, you get this. And for everyone who hasn't, let me just say, the on-ramp to making a feature film in the indie world is oftentimes very long, just because it requires so much. You need to do all these things by yourself or with a very small team that you can oftentimes use a massive team to do quite quickly. You need to raise the financing. You also have the chicken and egg conundrum of we need to get financing, but also need to air a cast. So it can just take a long time. And so there was a summer in which we thought, I think it's a go. I think we're going to be shooting Do No Harm this summer.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being the next summer, but we started casting the project for that summer, a year prior to the actual shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And the actor who played Ralph, Curtis, was one of the first guys that I auditioned almost a year and a half before we actually shot the film. And absolutely loved his performance, loved dialoguing with him during the auditions, and was just so thankful that we were able to maintain and hold on to that relationship. To keep him on board in the film, because he is so great in it. And the real kind of joy walking away from that day's shooting, because we at that point had rehearsed and auditioned the scene almost to death, was we both walked away going, I think we actually found the most truthful performance that we've played with yet. Compared to all the auditions, compared to all the rehearsals, I think we got the best one today in the can, which is the dream, right? The last thing you want is to walk away going, yeah, I think we nailed it earlier. We wasted
camera
it.
wasn't rolling.
Exactly. Why didn't we roll the rehearsal? Yeah.
I did recognize a few places. Did you shoot this entirely in Houston?
Yes, so in and around Houston. So a number of the locations were down in Rosenberg.
Okay.
And that was kind of a fun little domino effect of, again, when you're trying to convince anyone to help you out and you have very little money to throw their direction, it really has to just come from like, this is why this is so important to me and I'm so passionate about it, and they buy into that passion and buy into that why. And so there was this great domino effect of, we found the car wash location down in Rosenberg and dialogued with the owner of that establishment and convinced him that we could shoot there. And then as we went to the rest of the locations in the area, it was like, well, so-and-so down the street's helping us out. And they're like, oh, cool. And then it kind of became like this fun sort of kind of communal effort of, well, yeah, this is kind of the Rosenberg thing. And then, just out of necessity, we peppered a few other locations in and around the city as well.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your director of photography. How did you connect with them, and what did you guys shoot on?
So my director of photography, Paul DiFio, and I have been buddies and collaborators for a number of years now. Actually, when I first moved to Texas, there was another buddy of mine that I knew in California who had also moved out here, and he came out a couple of years before I did and had kind of just been starting to get to know the film community a little bit. And right when I got out here, he's like, hey, Chris, you got to connect with Paul. I think you and he are going to get along swimmingly. Kind of just similar outlook on creativity, and our approach was very similar. And he was absolutely right. Paul and I got along very quickly. We shot a little 48-hour film project here in Houston for one of the competitions. And then when it came time to shoot the proof of concept for Do No Harm, I was like, hey, Paul, I think this could be a fun thing to collaborate on. And so the great thing about that is we had that whole rodeo, so to speak, of the short film, getting to understand the visual language that we were wanting to play with on this, which for me, it was kind of this really interesting balancing act of trying to, in certain moments and in certain scenes, craft a visual look that felt almost documentary-like. We wanted the audience to feel the reality of these characters, the realities of these locations. But then in other moments, we wanted to go really heightened as we kind of pulled you into the world of our main character's mind. And things became very stylistic and very expressionistic. And he kind of understood that assignment, which was great. And then, similar to me, this is his first feature film as well. And the great thing about that, and certainly, there would have been some benefit if one of us had done this before, and we can kind of pull the other person along and be like, well, this is how it works. But because of that, we always had to come in every single day bringing both of our A game. There was no like, well, Paul will take care of it or Chris will take care of it. It was like, how the heck are we going to do this today? And there were a number of very complicated camera moves and interesting rigs, all of which were very DIY. There are moments where the camera spins upside down and, you get a techno crane for things like that normally, but we don't have money for a techno crane. So let's go to Home Depot and buy a 4x4 and attach our grip head up on top of there and attach the camera there. And then it was just a lot of that kind of stuff that was, for me, a lot of fun. And then also, I think, just brought a level of energy and enthusiasm from him as well as the rest of the crew, as we were kind of able to accomplish these things that at face value seemed almost impossible. So kind of every single time, and this is kind of an Edgar Wright thing that I stole, which is if you can ever on a shoot as a whole or on a day, shoot something that's particularly complicated, so that once you've accomplished it, you can gather the crew around and be like, guys, look, we just did this thing. Totally. And so we would do that as often as possible, kind of schedule that really weird, complicated shot at the beginning of the day. get it, and then kind of let everyone say like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
And that kind of just infused the rest of the day with that kind of fun energy of like, we're making something cool and something unique. And so yeah, Paul, God bless him. One of the things that any great collaborator will think about doing is trying to insulate their director from too much stress and anxiety. So I didn't find this out until, we'd wrapped. He's like, Chris, I was convinced every day I was going to get fired. Like, I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to put the light. These sets were way larger than I'd lit before.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I mean, you got a good poker face, man. And I never once felt that you were, in and over your head, because the scenes always turned out beautifully and very much in line with what we had talked about. So I could not be more proud of him and what he and his team, his gaffer, Wei-Han, who he's worked with a long time, what they accomplished. So yeah, it was wonderful to work with him, and I felt very, very pleased seeing the finished result of what we were able to accomplish.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did a great job. And what did you guys shoot on?
Yeah, so that's kind of an kind of unconventional choice. So our producer, understandably, was like, well, let's get the Alexa, or let's get a Red or something like that. And we actually did shoot the short film on a Red. But Paul actually works for an oil and gas company here in town.
Okay.
And so kind of on that oil and gas company's dime, he had accrued kind of a bunch of cameras that would have been free for us to use. And they had actually 3 Canon C70s, which isn't a camera that you oftentimes think about using for a feature film. But there were 2 things that we had going for us that ultimately made us go, well, yeah, let's just do it, which is, one, free usage. I mean, with a small budget, it's hard to say no to that.
Absolutely.
And then also, Paul and his camera team just knew those cameras incredibly well.
With it, yeah.
And I have discovered the hard way, and this is from my experience back when I was in film school. If you don't know how to use the camera system well, if you don't know how to actually make an image look pretty on that particular system, you are wasting your time. Use a camera you are comfortable with. Yeah. The odds that Joe Schmo, the average person watching it, will be able to tell the difference between what's shot in a Red or what's shot on a Canon C70 is little to none. Yeah. And I think the third thing, too, is we actually were able to consult with who ultimately became our color grader. We used TBD Post down in Austin, and they're fantastic. Yeah. We sent him some test footage just saying, hey, Brandon, is this acceptable? Can you color grade this in the ways that you need to? Yeah. And he said, yeah, this is great. Of course I can. So yeah, because of that, we went with that. And then we had 3 cameras at our disposal, which meant we could shoot cross coverage when we needed to. Yeah. One of the cameras just lived on a gimbal. So there was no having to rebalance that during the day. It was just like we would shoot some handheld stuff, set those aside, grab the gimbal shots. And so we were able to be that much more nimble and, efficient. Yeah. And you really needed to be on a film like this.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's interesting to hear, because the whole time I was watching it the second time, I kind of was looking at it with the filmmaker eye, like just like, oh man, what is this shot? Like, this looks great, but it doesn't look like anything I've seen recently. You kind of just get used to how certain things, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I do.
And not that takes away from it. Usually I try not to let my head go there because I'm trying to focus on the story, but I was like, what is this? What is this on? So that's what I wanted to ask. Yeah. That's awesome. And I definitely have been there. So I totally understand that approach. Yeah. What was your shooting schedule like?
So our shooting schedule was always tight. Our first mapped out shooting schedule was 20 days, which felt like a sprint. But I was like, it's accomplishable. Sure. Back to Harry for a second. We reached out to him about a month before the shoot, and he came on board, and very enthusiastically so. But he said, there's one small hiccup. I am presently back home. So he was actually born in Costa Rica, of all places. And he's back in Costa Rica, and he's going to be flying home to LA. And he just happens to have, before he came on board the film, a layover in Houston, right around the time that our film shoot was starting.
Oh, wow.
And so he's like, hey, I'll just extend my layover. Yeah. So I always like to say that this is the only film in history that the actor who's in the lead shot the entire thing on a layover. So he's here in Houston on a layover, but then he has this other trip planned to Hong Kong with his parents that he can't change the dates for. Yeah. So because of that, we went from a 20-day shoot down to a 16-day shoot. Wow. Okay. So that was, a little bit of heart attack inducing, as you would imagine. But we were able to shuffle a few things around, stick a couple of things together that are originally going to be, separated in some kind of way. Yeah. And then also, as I always like to say, one of my secret weapons is I've done this enough to understand how the sausage is made. Right. And by that, I mean, if I don't need to get an insert of a hand picking up a water bottle, I'm not going to get that day of. I can go back and get that later with a hand double, right? And I did indeed shoot hours and hours of little pickups like that. You know, for the eagle-eyed, if you look closely enough, you'll see these hands a lot, playing a lot of different characters throughout the film. So yeah, we went down to the 16-day film shoot, and then, you know, with a few kind of pickup days tacked on there for inserts and extra little bits and bobs. But yeah, it was a sprint. We did 6-day work weeks. But part of the joy of having the kind of crew that we had, all of whom were relatively green, is they live on passion. You know, that's their fuel. And so that challenge in a lot of ways was almost more inspiring. Like, yeah, we can do this in 16 days. Let's go. And also Harry absolutely understood kind of what he was asking us to do to accommodate him. And I mean, he would have been, you know, very passionate regardless, but because of that, I mean, he came in, he was always prepared. I mean, he had a whale of a part to memorize. Like there was just so much every single day. I mean, basically his schedule was come and shoot the whole day, eat a dinner, memorize tomorrow's lines, go to bed. It was just like, that was what he did for that entire 3 weeks. So yeah, he gave it 110%, making sure that, you know, we get through all the things that we needed to get through. And if you visited Houston, especially during the summer months, the weather can be a little bit bipolar. You know, it can be ridiculously hot some days and then cats and dogs an hour later, right? And so, gosh, we were so blessed. There was only one day that we really had to deal with the rain. But even that, kind of going back to this idea of just like, yeah, we can rise to the occasion. Harry got so excited when it started raining. He was like, well, where can we shoot the scene now? And I'm like, and then that got me thinking like, well, I guess maybe we could shoot it over on the porch over there, and we can kind of like, you know, kind of trap you in the porch, and that'll add to the drama of the scene. So there was always that sort of, we can do this, you know, kind of work ethic from everyone, and the willingness to push through kind of those insurmountable odds, a tight shooting schedule or the weather changing, that I think you can always feel. It's kind of ineffable, but you can feel that kind of passion in the film, in the finished product.
Absolutely.
Even if you can't quite put your finger on what it did to the finished product, it's doing something, I have to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. That enthusiasm, the scrappiness, like translates for sure. Something I definitely wanted to ask you, you mentioned the visual language a little bit ago, something that stood out to me, a couple of things actually, and I was wondering if these were scripted or at what point during the process did you come up with the idea to, first of all, like the phone conversations, to do straight into the camera, their side of it. And the second thing, well, a lot of the in-camera sort of transitions, lighting gags, basically, like into the, where you mentioned it got a little surreal for the main character. Those things really popped out at me because I was like, oh wow, that's cool. Like things you don't really see a lot.
Totally.
So when did those ideas pop up to you?
Yeah. So I would say one of the blessings of the, as I was describing it earlier, longer on-ramp into production is it gives you the time and space as a director to really think about how can I maximize the visual language, the cinematic language that I have at my disposal, right? Cinema offers you some tools that you don't get in every medium, right? And so how can I use those things appropriately, right? Hopefully appropriately, to draw the audience into this story, to draw the audience into this character's perspective. And so with the, you know, kind of characters looking directly down the lens, that was, it wasn't at the 11th hour that idea came to me, but it was closer to production. And I think a lot of that really came from just, again, conversations with my wife and with my dad and other healthcare professionals. And you just get this sense that everyone's looking to them to take care of a situation, to give them the answer, to take care of them, to heal them, right? To save them. And there is that sense of I'm being looked to and looked at to have the answers. And then also in moments in my life where I've been in a position where I'm in the wrong or I've done something incorrect, you can just kind of feel a little warm under the collar because, you know, they're on to you. They're looking at you. They're waiting for you to mess up and confess something. And so because those two things both felt appropriate to the healthcare profession and just personal to me, I thought it would be really interesting if when the character was on the phone calls, which again are oftentimes people are waiting for the answer. People are waiting to have you tell me what's going on here. It just felt very appropriate to have the characters and a lot of those looking directly into the lens, drawing you into that character's point of view and what he's feeling, kind of feeling trapped and looked at and expected to know what's going to be done next and all that thing, all those sort of things. And then as far as kind of committing to that, I was still slightly unsure. Like I hadn't done any tests, cutting together normal phone call with looking into the lens. And so when I was shooting with Rose, who plays Lean, the fiance character, I actually was able to get both when we shot with her. We got just the normal kind of phone call and the one where she's looking into the lens, just to kind of cover my bases. But then when it came time to shoot with the other actress and with Ronnie especially, because we're shooting 17 pages, I had to choose. So it was like, am I going to jump off the deep end, having not tested this, or am I going to shoot the safe version? And I'm like, well, let's get gutsy, you only get one first feature film. Let's try it. So we kind of just committed to it kind of at that point in production. And I'm really thankful that I did, because it seems to, at the very least, jump out as something memorable in a film.
Yeah.
And I think in a sea of media and a sea of indie films, you want to find a thing or two in a film that can kind of pop out and be memorable. And I feel like it's kind of become one of those things.
Yeah, when it happens the first time in the movie, I was like, oh, this is an interesting choice. And then like you mentioned, it lends to the documentary feel of it, like specifically like an Errol Morris kind of where he shoots people right down the barrel, and it really, especially like later, those Ronnie calls, I'm like, ugh, I feel like he's, like really bitching me out, maybe, you know? So it totally works.
I don't want you looking at me.
Yeah. I think it totally, and the Lean stuff towards the end where she's, kind of really struggling with some things.
Yeah.
Just that eye contact just really made me feel it.
And she has that. She really does.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And my wife has seen this film so many times.
Yeah.
And then the moments that still are affecting to her and like, I need to take a break, are those moments with her where she's, asking for an answer or asking for some sort of connection that he's kind of unwilling to give to her.
Yeah.
So that's always, rewarding if it can continue to affect people who've seen it that many times.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then when it comes to just some of the lighting gags, a lot of that was, again, just conversations I had with my cinematographer, Paul, and some of the stuff that we had done on the short film that we were both just really excited about and happy with. And so unlike the phone calls, which we hadn't been able to test, we had, through the short film, been able to kind of test some of that visual language where we were getting kind of into a character's mind and their mindscape and just really liking in a lot of ways what that was doing for the overall kind of just emotional vibe of those moments and in those particular scenes. And as shooting schedules often work out, you rarely are given the luxury of shooting the first scene first or the easiest scene first. Sure. Oftentimes you're shooting like the end of the film or one of the more challenging scenes first. And as it turned out, we were shooting a lot of the most challenging scenes on day number one. The only upside to that is they required a lot of like these kind of complicated lighting gags. And day number one was the only day we had a day to pre-light. So it actually kind of worked out well. But, for those who had seen it, you'll recognize this scene. There's a scene where the character Sam gets really animated and is kind of yelling at a character. That was shot on day number one, and all the complicated lighting that's kind of swirling around him in that scene was, again, all what we had to figure out and shoot on day number one. So but the nice thing about that, going back to what I was saying earlier, is everyone was able to look at that and go, well, this is kind of cool. Yeah, I think we're making something interesting here. Yeah. Let's continue to do this for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like I said, it really jumped out at me, and it was theatrical in the stage sense. I'm like, oh, if this were a play, this is how they would do this. Right. And also another button that is always good to push in. My favorite movie is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nice.
So, it's reminiscent of some of those tricks they would do in like the late, like 3, 4, 5, the middle of the series where they would change the scene or sort of like just change the lighting to go into the dream world or whatever. Yeah. And so I'm a sucker for anything like that. And the fact that it works so well in a movie that is relatively grounded otherwise,
That's great.
Those are the kind, like you said, it's the kind of the things that make it stand out, that add a little spice to it, that I think people are going to talk about.
Yeah. And one of the things that Paul and I actually discovered as we were filming, this is why I always encourage filmmakers, like, watch your dailies. Yeah. Watch what you've shot at the end of the day, because you might realize something that you wouldn't otherwise have figured out. And so what I realized on day number one when we shot this really, and again, it's very expressionistic, it's very big, what I realized is, we need to build into this, right? If we're going to, and some of the film have scenes that are a bit more grounded, if we're wanting to transition into something that is this expressionistic and this kind of theatrical, then we need to have some level of transition, right? So that meant that in the earlier scenes, when we had some theatrical lighting, it was much more subdued, much simpler. And so you're kind of gradually moving into what was the most kind of full expression of that theatrical lighting, so that it didn't completely bump you of like, wait, this isn't the visual language of this film.
Yeah, you work your way into it.
Exactly. And that really just came from kind of paying attention to what it was looking like as we were shooting it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, totally cool. So your shooting schedule is 16 days. Did you have any pickup day, like major pickup days that weren't just you with the camera shooting inserts?
Yeah, so there was some discussion of potentially, do we want to rework this? But ultimately, this is the great thing about having an editor as awesome as Anthony. I did the first full pass of the film, and because as in my case, I wrote the thing, I directed the thing, I kind of saw scenes edited a certain way, and I did that. And when in certain instances I came to a dead end and it wasn't working, my immediate thought was like, panic button, we got to reshoot something or shoot something new. And then when you give it off to a really amazing editor like Anthony, he goes, hold on, let's just see what we got here.
Yeah.
Well, what if we just did this instead? And I go, oh, well, that actually works quite well. So the only instance that we reshot something major happened during the film shoot itself. Again, another reason to watch your dailies, because when the actors are out there and everyone's on the clock, so to speak, that's the time to really figure out, oh, we need to reshoot something. Yeah, because you don't have to restart the engine months later.
Sure.
And so, again, for those that have seen the film, there's a very climactic scene, and a character, I won't say who, is on the ground. And when I was shooting that scene initially, the camera was a bit like this on the character that's on the ground. And it just worked when I was watching it on this little monitor.
Sure.
But when I put it up on the big screen, I was finding myself doing this the whole time as I was watching the character in that position. And it's dramatically speaking, one of the most important scenes in the film. Yep. And I knew I couldn't have the audience doing this as they were trying to connect with this character. Yeah. And so after a day's worth of shooting, a couple days later, I went to that actor and was like, hey, I know that scene's really important and you really gave it your all for that scene, but I really would love to return to it just for the camera's sake so we can get the camera tilted in the right position. Unfortunately, the other actor had already left. And so I was playing that character off camera in that scene. And there are moments where my visual effects artist had to paint me out of the corner of the frame because I kept on encroaching into the scene. But yeah, that was really the only kind of major reshoot or addition that happened during the original principle of photography.
Okay, gotcha. So how long was your post, process? How long did it take?
So we really were intent on entering a few film festivals quite quickly. And when I say we, I mean me, because I'm crazy like that. So I probably had the first cut finished within about a month after the shoot. Okay. But then it probably wasn't until I would say like maybe 6 months later that a fully fledged, we can present this to the world version was really ready to be shown. So at that point, I had sent it off to my co-editor. He's the main editor, really. I mean, he edited the thing properly. And he really, reworked it and got it into a really great space. And then the sound design team led by my brother, which is always something I'm very proud of and very enthusiastic
I noticed that in the credits. Yeah.
Yeah. So he works for a post-production house up in Seattle, and we've been making films together since we were 7 and 8. But yeah, so he was able to, really get in there with the team and sweeten things up and punch things up and add all the expressionistic sound design that really draws you in that much more. And then we were able to take it to TBD Post down in Austin for the color grade. So it took about 6 months with that whole process. And then just because some of the waiting on the film festivals to hear back from them was so kind of elongated, and I have the relationship that I do with my brother, I did keep on going back to him even after things were fully locked, being like, hey, what if we sweeten this thing? Or what if we add a little more sound design here? So, probably when it was all said and done, it was maybe almost a year of kind of all the post-production until it was like locked completely, like we're not touching this thing anymore.
Right. Yeah. Did you do, after screening it, at the first screening, did you do any tweaks?
Yes. So, they call them, friends and family screenings. Sure. But yeah, there was, again, if you've seen the film, there was a brief little montage that happens at the very end of the film where we return to some of the previous characters. Yeah. And that was just one of those things where I kind of just threw an audible day of, where the first time we shot with some of those characters, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to use this or where I'm going to use this, but I'd love to just shoot these little kind of vignettes of you guys together. And I'm so glad that I did, because it was kind of just sitting there in the hopper. I didn't know what I was going to do with it or if it was going to be used at all. And that first cut, it wasn't used because I couldn't find a place for it. But after that first screening, there was kind of definitely some feedback of like, we want to slow down and kind of settle into stuff just a little bit more in the end, allow us to excel just a little bit after this kind of, very harrowing journey. And it just seemed suddenly like a no-brainer of like, well, obviously let's just grab those things and stitch those pieces together. And then yeah, I was actually just sharing this with a group of my students, because again, I teach film at a university down here in Houston, that because our shooting schedule was so tight and we just didn't have time to shoot extra material, there is literally only one shot from a scene that we didn't use. Like everything else, like there's obviously multiple takes of certain shots, right? Yeah. But there was only like one larger moment that was cut from the film. Everything else that we shot is in the film. And so yeah, in a lot of ways, it was just slightly sanding, refining, honing kind of what we had. The final scene, again, with one of the characters is on the ground, really was the one that I felt like we worked and reworked a lot, just trying to strike the right tonal balance there, because it is trying to do a lot. This character's been on this really difficult journey, and you're really wanting to settle into, where is he at? Where is the other character at? Why is interaction playing out in the way that it is? And so, yeah, a lot of that was just, what if we took out this shot? Nope, cool. What if we took out this shot? Oh, that's interesting. What if we elongated the shot? Oh, that feels really good. So it was just kind of that process of really massaging and ensuring that had as much impact as we could have it.
Yeah, of course. So what did your, I guess, rollout look like?
Yeah.
Festivals and such like.
Totally. So we, in 2025, were able to start taking it to festivals. The first kind of screen that we did was a really special one. We did over in Cannes, France, at the Cannes Film Market. We at that point had brought on a sales agency, and they were able to bring us over there, and that was phenomenal. Obviously any filmmaker knows what Cannes is, and that part of the world is just beautiful in and of itself. So just visiting there as a tourist would have been great. But being able to, screen a film at the film market and field questions in that space and connect with different distributors was just awesome. It just felt really cool to be there. We were able to bring a longtime producing partner and buddy and my editor out there with us. Harry Shum Jr. was able to come out with us, and that was just really awesome. And then in June, we were able to have our kind of proper world premiere over at the Dances with Films Film Festival. Okay. We were the opening night film there, which was really fun, not only to be the opening night film, but also we had brought the short film, Proof of Concept, to that festival. Yeah. We brought it there in 2020. All the festivals were virtual in 2020, but we were able to bring it to that festival, and so it was kind of fun to have that full circle moment of bringing it back to that festival. And then another one that was really special is we went to the Austin Film Festival. Being here in Houston, any festival in Austin is just a special to be part of. Yeah. The proximity to Houston, the ability to send a lot of the local cast and crew down there for that screening, and get it in front of family and friends felt really special. And then we also went up to the Lone Star Film Festival in Dallas as well, which was great. And then kind of one of the unique kind of transitions is earlier this year, we ultimately decided to kind of take the film back from our sales team and kind of go the self-distribution route. And there are a variety of reasons for that, one of which is the indie film market right now is in a really precarious place. Even just in the last 5 years, things have changed so dramatically. And the sales that were a sure thing at one point, again, even 5 years ago, are now the riskiest of gambles for studios, and they're just not oftentimes willing to take them. And so in a lot of ways, there were two reasons that felt worth taking the film back and trying to go self-distribution. One, we felt like we would be able to do at least as well as our sales agency could have potentially done, if not better, because they were juggling 10 other projects. And we can give all of our time and focus to this project and making sure that the marketing and the rollout is all that it can be. And then also, because this film really is heavy on the healthcare angle and kind of talking about what's happening in that world, it felt like a really cool opportunity just to be a part of the conversation that's kind of being had with those that are watching it. And so in a lot of ways, the kind of the beginning of this distribution process has just been reaching out specifically and personally to a lot of healthcare providers and just providing them a private screener to the film and saying, hey, this film's about ready to enter the world, and we love your thoughts and feedback on it, and just want to make sure that you're feeling seen and accurately represented by the film. And being able to be a part of that process has been really fun, really special.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah.
So you guys, so right now you're sort of four-walling it, as it were.
Yep.
How are you sort of selecting where you're taking the tour, so to speak?
Yeah, totally. It's a great question. So we are looking kind of at these different windows of release. And one of the windows, which will happen probably 2 or 3 windows down, will be kind of your straight to TVOD. So we'll be going to Amazon Prime, Apple TV Plus, those kind of places where, people can very easily find it and purchase it there. The downside to going there first, and why we're not going there first, is those platforms take a large chunk of the apple, right? And so one of the things that we're actually doing as our first window of release is actually doing a pre-sale campaign on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter, I think a lot of people think of as a platform to raise funds to make a project, but it's over the last number of years become also a place for indie artists, both filmmakers as well as graphic novelists and novelists, to pre-sale their product and kind of connect directly with their audience and with their customers. And so we're ultimately on the 29th of September through the 29th of October going to be having a pre-sale campaign on Kickstarter, and that'll be kind of our first window. And that obviously is just a proper pre-sale, but then also some of those funds will go back into the marketing machine, and we'll use those to further market it. Definitely wanting to take it to other select cities for screenings. We're actually right now talking with a couple of really cool healthcare organizations that are going to be helping us to sponsor some screenings in different cities, which will be really cool. Again, particularly for healthcare workers. And then, again, depending on how the Kickstarter campaign goes, we'll be doing that kind of on a large or small scale, and then ultimately ending up in those Amazon places and Apple TV Plus places.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
great. That's awesome. It's interesting because you're like the second or third person that I've heard talk about doing the pre-sale thing on Kickstarter, and it's such a good idea. But it's only something I've seen recently. So I'm like, why didn't we think of this before? That's great. That's a great way to approach it. So what have you found? What has the response been from the healthcare community from those that have seen it?
Yeah, it's one of, if not the most rewarding part of the kind of the rollout process, getting to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Because obviously I've had my wife next to me the whole time, my dad as well. And so there was a level of confidence and comfortability knowing that I was getting that world right to a degree.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also, always that kind of question mark of, will it resonate with a larger audience? Will they feel represented? Will they understand the heart behind it? Because the film does go to some hard places and some darker places. And, there's always the possibility of things being misconstrued or misunderstood.
Sure.
And so one of the best things about just sharing it with these healthcare providers, nurses, and doctors has just been hearing their response, which is, you're getting, at the very least, you're getting something right, if not a lot right, about what we endure, what we're trying to accomplish, the fears that we have, the anxieties that we harbor, as well as just the love and care that we have for those that we take care of. And so that's been really rewarding and really meaningful. And in a lot of ways just continues to kind of focus our efforts as we're rolling it out to really focus on how can we get it out to that community in a large and significant way, which has again led to us connecting with these really large nursing organizations that have some of, like, one of them actually represents 1 of every 2 nurses in the United States, and getting their enthusiastic support has been, again, also very, very encouraging.
That's wonderful. So you have a screening coming up very soon.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get this done in time. Check the upload. You'll see that I did it. If you want to mention that, and then any others, I don't know if you have any others announced. I don't remember, but if you want to mention those, feel free.
No, totally. So yeah, we have our Houston premiere, which, as we've talked about in this conversation, this is where we shot the film. So the fact that we get to bring it back here, screen it for the Houston audience at the River Oaks, which is a beautiful classic looking cinema here in downtown Houston. Our premiere will be on the 20th of August, which is just in a few days here. So the really exciting thing is our first screening in their largest theater there at the River Oaks is completely sold out. The 715 screen is completely sold out, which just feels so exciting knowing that the theater's gonna be that packed. Many of whom will obviously be family and friends and cast and crew, but then a lot of healthcare providers are going to be coming up to watch that as well. Some of them are actually flying in for the premiere, which feels really, really exciting. And then we have a second showing at 9:45, which is, I think, down to the last 20 seats. So if you haven't purchased your ticket yet, jump on that. Jump on that. 9:45, August 20th. So yeah, it's anytime you get to screen it for an audience, it feels special. But this one feels particularly special because we're back in the place where it all began, surrounded by a lot of the collaborators that kind of helped to bring the thing to life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Any others upcoming screenings, other places?
Yeah, so nothing's locked in yet. However, we are already talking about 2 potential screens in the Bay Area because a couple of these nursing organizations that we're dialoguing with are based out of the Bay Area. And one of the things that we're talking about, probably during the actual Kickstarter campaign itself, so sometime in kind of early October would be my guess, we'll be looking to have a couple in the Bay Area.
Okay, sounds good. And if people want info, where's the best place to send them?
Absolutely. So now is absolutely the time to jump over to our website, donoharm-movie.com. Yes, donoharm-movie.com. And you can find obviously just more info about the film, watch trailers, watch clips. But most importantly, in sending us your email address, we will keep you up to date with everything that's happening, including when exactly the pre-sale campaign goes live, so you can jump on board and support. And if you need any extra incentive to kind of drop us your email address and kind of sign up on that mailing list, that gives us just a really accurate idea of what kind of response we'll get from our Kickstarter campaign, so we can actually set the amount in an appropriate and reasonable place.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally makes sense. And final question, and as a filmmaker myself, it annoys me when people ask me this question, but I know after people see this movie, they're going to want to know the answer. I know you're in the middle of promoting this one and working with this one, but do you have what's next? What's on the horizon for you?
100%. So I got a couple of things that I'm working on. One of them is a indie TV pilot called Happiest Place. So I worked at the Disneyland theme park in Anaheim, California for nearly 9 years. And as you would imagine, collected a lot of very interesting stories that took place on stage and backstage. So the TV pilot is not set at Disneyland, but it's set at a theme park, very much like Disneyland. And you're just getting to know this very delightful, very quirky cast of characters backstage. And in this particular instance, the theme park is struggling, and so they're trying to figure out, do we sell the place? Do we hold on? So it's kind of a bit of the energy of something like The Bear, except that set at a theme park. And then I'm also knee-deep on my next feature-length screenplay. It's called Till Death. It's going to be kind of a mixture of a relational drama meets a kind of high-stakes, kind of cosmic horror film.
Oh, wow. Speaking my language.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, yeah, when you mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm like, I think you'll like this one.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, cool, man. Thank you so much for coming out and being on the show.
Thank you.
Check out Do No Harm if you get a chance. It is great. Look forward to seeing what you got coming up next, and wish you all the success with this movie.
Thanks, brother.
All right, thanks, dude.
Cheers.